Hello, and welcome to the Growing in Business interview series. I'm your host, Fleming Johnson, and today I'm joined by Allison Wood, who is CEO at DaVinci Education. Allison, thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to kick us off with a brief background as to who you are and what you do?
Hi, Fleming. It's a pleasure to be with you. And sure, I'd be glad to introduce myself. So, as you mentioned, I am the CEO and co-founder, actually, of a company called DaVinci Education. We are what's known as a spin-out from Duke University, which means we started inside the university and became a separate company. It was a company built around software that could help basically run medical schools. So it's used by students, it's used by faculty, the leadership of the school to assess student progress and make sure these folks who are going on to become doctors and other kinds of clinicians are achieving the competencies and proficiencies that they need to be. So I started this company actually alongside my husband at the time. We are now divorced, but he was the technical side of the house. So he was the software programmer who saw this need and joined the folks at Duke University School of Medicine. And after he'd been working there for a few years, we all kind of looked around and said, there's an opportunity for this software to benefit other schools besides just Duke. So we thought that just sounded great to be entrepreneurs. So we spun the company out. That was in 2011 and did not know what the road ahead would entail, but sometimes ignorance is bliss. So we ran the company together for several years. Again, he was on the technical side and I was on the software side, on the business building side. And then our personal relationship came to an end in 2019, and then the professional relationship also ended shortly thereafter. So I ended up leading the company through COVID and through the years that followed to a successful exit in 2024 to a private equity company as part of a strategic merger with a competitor of ours. So it's an outcome that is not often realized by most small businesses, and I'm extremely proud of it. And as a result, though, my role is evolving. I am no longer the CEO of that company. I stayed with the company for several months to help support the transition. And now I am a leader in search of her next opportunities. So I learned a lot and I'm excited to talk to you about all that in our conversation today. And personally, I have three children, three adult children, 26, 24, and 21. And that's my other major accomplishment in life.
Allison, what inspired you to start your own business? And what was that initial spark that once you saw the product led you to take the entrepreneurial leap?
Yes, what started the business again was my ex-husband and I, when we were married, we had moved to North Carolina from Los Angeles because we wanted to raise our children in a different environment. And he found the opportunity at the School of Medicine at Duke to be a programmer and write some software that they were going to use inside the School of Medicine. It was not meant at that point to become a separate company. But he worked there for several years, and we again realized that there was a need outside of just Duke School of Medicine for this kind of software. And so we were both very intrigued at the idea of being entrepreneurs. And we said, let's do it. We said yes, and then we'll figure it out as we go. So we were off to the races at that point, and we had very little idea of what this race was going to entail. But we didn't really start off saying, this is a product we want to build. We saw a need, and we were inside the customer, as they say, and we really believed, and it played out successfully, that we could create something that was innovative and powerful and helpful and really, in the end, supports public health because we're helping support the education of our future doctors.
What are some common misconceptions about running a business and how do you address them?
Wow, there are so many misconceptions, I think, about running a business from folks who have not had that opportunity or privilege. And there are a lot that are specific to the space that you're in. So, for example, we were known as enterprise, business to business software. And so that meant we were selling to universities. And that's a very different kind of a challenge, selling to other companies versus being in a consumer business where you're selling to individuals. There are some very different challenges between those two worlds, but there are also some overlaps. And I think maybe that's more what you're asking about, sort of generally, what are some of the misconceptions I think the number one misconception about running a business is it is always going to take more time and more money than you think it will, regardless of what you're trying to do, right? Hire somebody, build a product, expand into a new market, design a business card. I mean, all of it ends up needing more time, attention, and money than you might think at the beginning. Um, the second, I think, is a misconception from others around you, which is that, oh, you're running your own business. You must just have all the flexibility in the world. You don't have a boss, right? And the reality is, your customers and your clients are your boss, and you cannot quit them in the way that you might be able to quit a traditional job, right? So I think that misconception is, I think it contributes to a sense of isolation a lot of times for entrepreneurs, because if you have never been responsible for running a company, I don't care how big the company is, how small, what space you're in, it is a different experience than anything else you've ever done. And there's really no way to describe it to people. I think folks think it sounds very fun, which it can be, right? And exciting, which it can be, but it's lonely. It can be very lonely. And so I think that's a misconception that people just don't understand unless they're in the thick of it. Um, and the third one I think that I can think of off the cuff is really from a leadership perspective, and that is how important it is to be authentic and vulnerable. I think there is a misconception or a misperception, right, that leaders have to be tough and strong and have all the answers all the time and they can never express uncertainty. You know, that's just not the way human beings work, right? You can't try to do it all because you can't do it all, but you can ask for help, and you should ask for help, right? You might not have the money to hire the help that you need, but you can engage with other people. You can listen, you can reciprocate, right? And offer to help them, even if you don't think you have anything to offer to help them. You know, if somebody gives you a good piece of advice or connects you with somebody else, thank them. And you say, you know, let me know if there's anything I can do for you. But I think the advice I give young entrepreneurs a lot of times, often, especially women entrepreneurs, is that the best thing I did was I just kept raising my hand and opening my mouth, right? I talked to people, I met people, I absorbed what they gave me. Um, and I think that is a huge part of how I was able to achieve the success that I did in my business, was I invited everyone in who had something of value or relevance to share with me. So that misperception of you have to do it all by yourself. If you're the boss, you're in charge, only your voice matters. All of those things are very dangerous things to believe.
How do you maintain a work-life balance as a business owner? Do you have any personal rituals or habits that keep you motivated and focused?
Wow, work-life balance was very hard for me and my co-founder because, as I mentioned, we were married at the time we started the business and we had three young children. And there really wasn't a balance to be had because even if we had separated personal and professional, it's at the expense of the other, right? If you're taking personal time, then you're not working. And when you're starting a business, you feel like you have to spend 27 hours a day working. So that was really an untenable situation. And that was unfortunate. So I think work-life balance, though, or like, as I like to refer to it, life-work blend, because I don't think it's ever really a balance. It's always a kind of a dynamic blend. I think there's a few things that you can do. One of them for me is physical exercise. So I like to walk almost every day. I don't listen to an audiobook. I don't put music on. I don't try to be productive, right? Or multitask during that time. It's really my clarity break. I usually do it in the morning and I just let my brain go wherever it wants to go. So that's very helpful. And also just knowing that I'm taking care of myself physically is a good feeling. Um, I think also reminding myself that there's only so much I can do in a day, right? I lay out a list, I make a plan, I achieve what I can achieve in that day, and then I try to let it go because all that work's going to be there tomorrow. So, sort of creating those boundaries for myself and not expecting too much from myself or an unreasonable amount. And I think finally, carving out time for some kind of relaxation, right? Or hobbies or something like that. That is as important as any work that you're doing because, and I speak from experience, if you over-index on the work part of your life at the expense of the personal and individual part of your life, you are going to be weaker in both. And that's a hard hole to dig out of.
In the constantly evolving business landscape, how do you stay adaptable and open to change? Are there any specific strategies that you use to remain innovative?
I don't know if I would call them strategies necessarily, but I do really try to live into one of my core values, which is curiosity. So I believe there's so much out there to learn, and there are so many interesting and creative people doing cool things that I would like to do. So I try, again, I raise my hand, I open my mouth, I try to reach out and make connections. On LinkedIn, I go to some events, but not a ton, right? I'm kind of a homebody at heart, and I know I can't do it all. So I really try to choose intentionally, and perhaps that's a strategy too, choosing intentionally and making sure that I have at least a couple of reasons for doing something. And I'll give an example. So recently I joined a group of women who are reading a great book called Likeable Badass by a woman named Allison Wood. And it is about how women can get the respect and power and influence that they are due in the business world. And while I'm not really a book club person, I had read the book and I liked it. So my intentional thoughts about choosing this activity were I thought it would be interesting to discuss this book with others, right? I wanted to expand my circle of women business leaders. And I just thought it would be good for me to get out. So having multiple rationales for doing something, I think is a good strategy because what that means is if one of those doesn't pan out, if you go and do something and you're a little bit disappointed in that aspect of it, well, at least you came for other reasons too, right? And so net net, you end up having that be a positive experience, that action that you took. So that's one of my strategies around sort of how I invest my time and energy. And taking action for someone like me almost always feels better than not taking action. So I will always have a bias toward action and kind of see what happens as a result.
Could you offer a glimpse now into your future plans and goals for yourself and your business? What do you envision for the next chapter of your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, that's a great question for me at the point I'm at now, Fleming. As I mentioned, so I sold my company last year in a strategic merger to a private equity group that I think is really sets our organization up to continue to grow in a way that we would not have been able to do on our own. So I'm very pleased and proud about that. But that opens up a new opportunity for me. Now it's time for me to do something else. And I'm really leaning into that and exploring different opportunities that are out there. And it's fascinating to get a sense of myself, sort of to see that emerge, a new sense of myself post DaVinci Education, my company, because it was almost my alter ego. And I wrapped up so much of my personal self and my professional effort in that company. I sort of now am enjoying stepping back from that and saying, okay, here are some things I did well, that I do well, that I enjoy, but maybe they don't fit in the box that they fit in before. So I'm exploring areas where I'd like to keep growing. I'm writing a book and I'm reassessing what it is about work, right, and professional effort that energizes me. I am a leader at heart, and so leadership is a huge part of it. Communication is a huge part of it for me, and I love to catalyze other people's energy and ideas into something that can become really tangible, right? Helping them sort of pull all that energy together. So I think the last thing really that motivates me, or one of the things that's top of mind for me, is life is short, right? And I want to be intentional about where I devote my time and energy personally and professionally. So I'm keeping the door as wide open as I can, but also really focusing on what I know about myself and what lights me up.
Tell me, what advice would you offer to aspiring entrepreneurs who are, say, just starting their journey or facing challenges in their businesses?
I think that the best advice I could probably give anyone, and I give it often, whether they're an aspiring entrepreneur, whether it's one of my children, or really anyone, is found in a wonderful quote by a man named Howard Thurman, who was an author and a philosopher and a civil rights leader. And what Mr. Thurman said was, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And I think that sums up pretty much the whole reason for everything we do on this planet. Make sure it's making you come alive, right? May not be every day, but at its essence, what you do should light you up. And if it doesn't, you can either see if there's something about that you can address. And if you can't, maybe it's time to look at something new.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for your time today, Allison. It's great meeting you and learning more about your entrepreneurial journey.
Thanks, Fleming. It was a real pleasure to be here with you.
And to everyone watching, I look forward to seeing you in our next episode. And we are done.
All right. Was that good? Was that sufficient?
That was excellent.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Excellent.
I'm so
Excellent.
glad.
And I like the way you address the achievement and then the looking for what's next.
Yeah.
I think you did that quite well. It's somebody that sees this is going to be in a similar position,
Yeah.
I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I hope so. That's why as I get older too, I just had a big birthday, which shall remain numberless, but you just realize that there are a lot more similarities than differences in when you really take a 30,000-foot view of
Yeah.
what the challenges that each of us face, right? And so whether you just having your first baby or starting a job or going to college or retiring or things like why am I doing what I'm doing, right? And what are my options? And I have options, right?
Yeah.
So I did try to think about that as I navigated the questions
Okay.
so that I could bring forward some thoughts that would be as universal as possible. So.
Good. Well, excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me. And I hope we can stay in touch.
Yes, and I'll be watching to see what you're doing next.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Take care.
Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.